he was like, oh, well, let me change my story. Let me tell you what really happened. Hey y'all, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Janae, if you didn't know, and today's video is another true crime episode. So if you're ready, let's go. Alright y'all, so before we even start today's video, I really just want to send my heartfelt prayers and condolences to those people who are in California dealing with the California fires right now. The people in LA and LA County and its surrounding areas that are literally burning to the ground as we speak. I'm just praying that everybody is staying safe out there. And yeah, I'm just sending my heartfelt prayers to everybody out there who is dealing with this. This is such a sad way to start the year, bro. Stay safe, y'all. But yeah, so let's just go ahead and get into today's video. And if you have been here for a couple of weeks now, you know that I am going from the north to the south of America in alphabetical order. So from Alabama to Wyoming. And today we are going to be in Illinois, more specifically a place called Farmersville, Illinois. And Farmersville is exactly what it sounds like. It is a farming town that is a far cry from the cities. And just to give a little bit of context, it is roughly 4 hours away from Chicago. And it's not even described as a town. It's actually described as a village. And as of 2023, the population was 669. So, a teeny tiny little place. And according to my research, Farmersville is the home to an annual Irish Days festival. And when I read that, I felt like I needed to include it in this video simply because it reminded me of To Wong Foo and they Strawberry Fest. You know? If any of y'all have ever seen To Wong Foo, tell, like, I don't know, just like that little small compact place with like 5 people in it who always just attend this little festival, which is the highlight of their town, right? No? I don't know. Let me know. Anyways, it's November 24th, 2021, which is the day before Thanksgiving of that year. And a man named Chris Smith and a woman named Leslie Reeves are having their first date at a place called the Uptown Saloon. Now, these two had met online and was chit-chatting it up, and they kind of clicked online, so they decided to link up. Now, Chris is the one who lived in Farmersville. Leslie did not. Leslie actually lived in Troy, Illinois, which was about an hour away from Farmersville. And like I said, the two had really hit it off online. So when Leslie drove this hour away for this date, she had high hopes for this date because, baby, if she was driving an hour away, it better be a good date, right? Like driving an hour away for a bad date, like I'm pretty sure she would have been pissed. But luckily for her, the date went well. They was laughing, they was joking, they was kikiing, having a good old time, just enjoying each other's company. And Leslie even texted one of her friends who knew she was about to go on this date that the date was going well. So all's good in Farmersville. In fact, everything was so good that Leslie and Chris decided to continue their date at Chris's house. Now, let me just say that Leslie was a 45-year-old grown mother, divorced, I believe. So she knew a thing or two about going on dates and being safe at the same time. So the friend that I told you that she texted saying that the date went well, she also texted this friend Chris's address because you can really never be too sure, right? So just in case anything happened, somebody knew where she was and who she was with. So Chris and Leslie go back to his place. They having a good time at his place as well. They throw a pizza in the oven, still chit-chatting, laughing, having a good time. So now the morning of the 25th rolls around and Leslie's friend tries to text her because she hadn't heard from her for the remainder of the night. And I'm just guessing that it was unlike Leslie to just not reply at all. So being that she was on a date with this random ass man in the middle of Illinois where she really didn't know nobody, the friend took it upon herself to drive to the address that Leslie said she would be at just to make sure that she was okay. And shout out to this friend because she could have pulled up and Leslie could have been mad like, girl, what is you doing here at this man's house? But she didn't care about none of that. She was like, I need to check on my friend. I haven't heard from her since last night. She here with this random ass man. I'm gonna go check. And while she was on her way to go check on Leslie, she called the police to do a welfare check. Now, when she arrived to Chris's house, the police wasn't there yet, but Chris's neighbor was there. And this was Chris's 16-year-old neighbor. Obviously, she probably lived with her parents, but she was just outside. So the neighbor saw Leslie's friend sitting outside and she asked her, was she there to check on Chris? And Leslie's friend was like, nah, I'm here to check on my friend Leslie actually. But the 16-year-old was like, okay, well, I'll go to the door. Since I know Chris, it won't be weird for me to, you know, go to his door and see what's up. So the neighbor goes around to the back door, and When she does, she sees that the glass is broken on the back door, and she also sees Chris lying on the floor. And in seeing this, obviously she panics. She's 16 years old. She freaks out, but she does have enough sense to call the police. And in the call to the police, you can hear the panic in the neighbor's voice. And I may or may not put it in here. I don't know. But she was in the 911 call. If I don't put it in, you can hear her say, "I'm only 16. I can't deal with this." Like, it was actually heartbreaking.
Nobody's answering the door, and the back window's shattered, and there's a body, and there's a foot I saw on the floor. I'm only 16. I can't deal with this.
So Nanette, who is Leslie's friend, and Brijon, I think that's how you pronounce it, Brijon, who is the 16-year-old, they wait outside for paramedics, EMTs, and police to arrive. And when they do, they go inside the house and find that 2 people are injured. One is actually deceased, and the other one is barely clinging to life. And they do identify the victims as Chris Smith and Leslie Reeves. And Leslie is already deceased upon their arrival. And since Chris was still alive, although barely, he was rushed to the hospital. So a little bit about Chris. He was a 48-year-old divorced single dad to a 9-year-old. And according to the people in his life, he was the kind of man who enjoyed the simple things. He worked for a pool contractor and was in a local band. But more than anything, aside from his daughter, obviously, he loved to garden. Specifically, he loved to plant banana trees and grow pumpkins for, you know, the harvest season. And I already told y'all that Leslie was 45. I don't know if I said she was 45 or if I said she was in her 40s, but nonetheless, Leslie was a 45-year-old divorcee as well, and she was a mother of 2 with a master's degree of science and engineering. And I don't know how long y'all been here, but if y'all been here for a little while, then y'all know that I think that people who are engineers or have engineering degrees or anything to do with the maths are extremely intelligent. But even though she was a woman of high intelligence with this master's degree of engineering, she actually chose a different path for her career. She decided to be an entrepreneur and open up her own studio called All You Studio and Party Place. And it's at this studio where she taught Pilates and self-defense for women. So now back at the crime scene, in the initial stages of the investigation, it seemed to be clear to investigators that I was about to say the couple, but they weren't even, they was just on their first date. But it was clear that these 2 had been ambushed and caught off guard because there was the pizza. Remember I told you they had put a pizza in the oven? Well, yeah, the pizza was burnt in the oven and the refrigerator was pushed away from the wall and kind of towards the door. So it was almost as if once they were ambushed, they tried to protect themselves by barricading themselves in, like by barricading the door with the refrigerator. So in an effort to obviously figure out why this happened, investigators start talking to Chris and Leslie's friends and family, and they learned that the 2 were on a first date. So there was really nothing between the 2 of them that should have caused this. But then they learned from Leslie's friends and her family that she actually had an ex-boyfriend who was quite concerning to them, just based off of he and Leslie's relationship, and his name was Robert Tarr, and he was also a divorcee with 3 kids. And according to Leslie's friends and family, they said that this relationship between she and Robert was sort of a volatile one in which Robert was abusive and controlling towards Leslie. So naturally they want to go talk to Robert, and they find him at his home in Collinsville, Illinois, which is also about an hour away from Farmersville. Now, Robert is super cooperative. He goes down to the police station voluntarily to be questioned. And despite what Leslie's friends and family say about her and Robert being broken up, Robert tells the detectives that he and Leslie are actually still in a relationship and that they good. Now, he did say that they obviously had the regular relationship problems, but it wasn't nothing too serious. So they keep questioning him for a little bit before they finally tell him that Leslie is actually deceased. And when they tell him that Leslie is dead, his reaction is very dry. It really gave bad acting. And so with the news of Leslie's passing, they asked Robert, has he ever been or does he even know about a place called Farmersville, Illinois? And he like, nah, Nope, never heard of it, never been, don't know what you're talking about. So they finish up with his questioning and they let him go because they really don't have anything to say that he is or is not involved at this point. So while all of this investigating was going on, Chris was at the hospital undergoing multiple surgeries, and ultimately they ended up putting him in a medically induced coma. And even though he did undergo those multiple surgeries, they still left a bullet in Chris's brain because it was too risky, or in his skull rather, because it was too risky for them to remove. And obviously the detectives and his family and friends are praying for a speedy recovery, but a speedy recovery it would not be, because Chris remained in this coma for the next 3 months. So detectives had to figure this out without the help of their living witness, and because they was on Robert's ass, they went to go question him again. And during this particular interview, Robert gave them an alibi, saying that he was at home all night and that his 17-year-old daughter could vouch for him. She could corroborate his alibi. And so naturally detectives bring the daughter in. She's 17 years old, so she know what's going on. And the daughter had a higher moral compass than her father because she told the truth. And what she said was that her dad actually, he was home, but he did leave the house twice that night, and he was gone for at least 2 hours one of those times. And she said that at around 2 o'clock in the morning, she was woken up by her dad kind of like pacing and washing clothes and kind of in a frantic state, saying that he missed Leslie and he couldn't sleep. So it's giving suspicious. So they confront Robert with what his daughter said, and he was like, oh, well, let me change my story. Let me tell you what really happened. And we'll get back to what his real story was a little bit later. But in the meantime, seeing as how he was looking like the prime suspect, investigators got a warrant to search his house. And in said house, they found a phone and a Glock. But his daughter said that there was a gun that was missing. She said that she saw it in his drawer a couple days or the day of the murders, and then now it ain't there. So suspicious again. And due to the circumstantial evidence piling up against Robert, police decided to arrest him and charged him with Leslie's murder and Chris's attempted murder. Now, while Robert was in jail, he said that he did lie about his whereabouts to the police, but he was innocent. And he said that he was in Farmersville, but the only reason that he was in Farmersville was because Leslie asked him to be there. And he said the only reason he lied to police about where he was because he didn't want his daughter to know where he was, because his daughter and Leslie didn't get along, and he didn't want to tell his daughter that he was with Leslie. It was weird. He said that Leslie asked him to follow her to Farmersville to go on the date with Chris to make sure that she was safe. And I mean, I'm thinking that maybe he must have forgot that he told the detectives that they was already in a relationship. So why would you be following your girlfriend to go have a date with another man? I don't know. People do different things in different relationships. I don't know. Maybe I don't know. But according to Leslie's friends and family, that didn't make no sense, because a couple weeks prior to Leslie's murder, she was pissed because Robert had pulled up on her while she was out on another first date. And they also said that Leslie was scared of Robert. And she even texted one of her friends and said, I could be killed by him someday if I don't cut all contact. So why in God's good name would she invite Robert to follow her to a first date? So as detectives are building a case against Robert, Chris comes out of his coma in January of 2022. And when he was well enough to talk to the detectives, they went to talk to him to see just what he remembers from that night. And unfortunately, he didn't remember anything from the attack. Mostly nothing from that night, not even Leslie. When they was like, okay, so who did this to you and Leslie? He was like, who the fuck is Leslie? Like, he had no real memory of the attack, which I guess would kind of be good in some ways, because your brain kind of blocks out that trauma. But even though he don't have no real memory of that night or Leslie, he does have daily reminders of this attack, because he's partially paralyzed, confined to a wheelchair, and like I said, he's living with a bullet in his head. But nonetheless, because he doesn't remember anything from that night, he wasn't able to ID Robert as the person who did this to him and Leslie. But it was all good though, because detectives were able to build a strong enough case to be able to take Robert to trial without Chris's testimony. And the trial happened in April of 2024. And during the trial, it came out that Robert had a tracking device on Leslie's car. He texted one of his friends, "I don't feel like she would drive that far for a party or to go out with a girlfriend. I think it's for a dude." So it sounds like he was probably mad about that. And then they ended up pulling up his internet search history, and he was looking up stuff like if the police could track his phone if he used a VPN. And on top of that, they had phone data that put Robert in Farmersville. And they also had the gun and the bullets that matched those at the crime scene. And so with all of this compiled, it was looking like Robert did it. But Robert said he was innocent. Robert said that he was actually being set up by somebody. I don't know who, but somebody was setting him up. That's what Robert said. And the defense counsel said that there was a lack of physical evidence that put Robert as the one who did this. They said, yeah, his phone records show that he was there because he said he was there. He said that he followed Leslie there because she wanted him to be there, right? And then there was no blood evidence that was found of his. There were no fingerprints on the refrigerator. It was like I said, it was just a lack of physical evidence that put Robert at the scene. This case was largely circumstantial, but the jury felt that the circumstantial evidence was sufficient enough to convict Robert of first-degree murder and attempted murder. And 2 months after the jury read their verdict, he was sentenced. But before we get to the sentencing, I can't remember if it was while Robert was in jail awaiting trial or if it was while Robert was awaiting his sentencing. But it was said that Robert was making phone calls trying to I guess, quote unquote, finish the job with Chris and get rid of his only living witness. Yeah, so it probably was prior to him going to trial because that was before he knew what Chris would remember. So I'm thinking that it was while he was awaiting trial. But nonetheless, they charged him with that too. And like I said, 2 months after he was found guilty, his sentencing took place. And while Chris wasn't at the trial, he did make an appearance at Robert's sentencing hearing. And he said to the court that he lost his life without being killed. And the judge ended up sentencing Robert to 85 years in prison. And while Robert is whittling away on cell block D, Chris is slowly but surely regaining control of his life. He is back in his band and he is now engaged to, or he might be married now at this point, but last I heard, he was engaged to a woman named Michelle. And albeit a struggle, Chris is taking life one day at a time. And I really do just pray for nothing but happiness for Chris in the future. But yeah, y'all, that is all I have for today's case. Thank you all so very much for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. And I will see you all in the next one when we are in Indiana. And according to my research, Farmersville is the home to anyways, it's November 21st. Nope, it's not. Who Leslie texts. I ain't like that. The pizza had burnt in the oven. And he said that he and Leslie and what? Despite what Leslie's friends and family say about her and Robert being broken up, excuse me, and even though he did undergo all of those, and that how old was she? Yeah. She was pissed because and they also had the bullets and they also had the gun and the bullets to match the crime scene. And they also had the bullet. And his defense counsel said that there was a lack of physical evidence.